It's good to recap where things are time and time again, because it is confusing initially until one gets very familiar with this, where things are. The plugin core plugin name is here, and we've seen already that this is where we set up our constants, what happens on activation, what happens on deactivations. We register our hooks here for activation and deactivation, and then basically we fire off the second, shall we say, core file, which is in the includes. It's this class IWS events DB, and we have lots of comments that tell us what it's all about. But basically, one of the most important things is it's loading dependencies, setting the locales, and registering our public and admin hooks. So we can see in dependencies, it's loading in all of the activator, loaders, admin, and any custom ones we may have. So if we create our own custom class, this is where we need to load it. So whenever you make new class files, make sure they're registered in here. And we can see if we have some basically helper functions. For example, here, this is just some functions that basically is then kind of registered here so that they get loaded. And I've got another one in admin, for example, here, a little bit of debug information. So when you're stuck, always come back to this one here. It includes, that's kind of your initial starting point after you fired off from the plugin. So if we look at our app, let's start seeing where things actually are. So first things, we've got all our admin pages. So how do we form that? So if we go into class IWS events DB, and we come down and we scroll down beyond here. If you notice here, we are adding in our hooks. Our public and hooks. So basically, if we come back and let's say look at our admin hooks, we're loading in, we're using IWS events DB admin. So that'll be in the admin folder here. And we're using enqueuing scripts and we're enqueuing sort of styles and scripts, shall we say, in the admin section. This basically is just a class function that basically does all the registering in the hooks. So when we're doing our admin enqueues, we see these function names here. So where are they? Now these can be any functions named. They're called enqueue styles by default, but it could be anything. What we'll do is, because we're in the admin, is we're actually in this folder, go into the admin folder, events DB, go into this admin folder here. And if we scroll all the way up, we come on down, we can see that function enqueue styles and enqueue scripts, that's where the functions are for our particular hooks here. They're in that folder here. And you can sort of see that basically by default it's loading in the CSS for the styles, and for the scripts the JS. This it's loading in this one here, and for the CSS these are the default ones here. This is a custom one here, but if you notice I've got my own custom one here that I want to load in some JavaScript, and it's just basically just some debug info, some helper functions just for demonstration purposes only. And then basically what we also need to do is, this is where we register those admin dashboard pages. So we've got our event management menu that's creating all our sub pages that calls upon certain functions that I've also included in this same page down at the bottom here. Now of course these could be refactored out into another function file here, but for the moment they're all kept in here. So if we come back up, we see we have this event menu management that's making all our dashboard pages. The functions are listed down below. To see where that came in, if we go back again to includes, always go back into this one here, and you can see that when we wanted to make our admin menu hook, remember all our hooks are defined either in the admin hooks or in the public hooks. Basically we have to load them in here, and what I've basically done with this one is said for our admin menu, load this function here. Where is this function? Well, by default I'm putting them in here, but they could be anywhere else, but that's probably a good place to put them, and there you see that function, and that calls other functions that are listed down below. So you can see how we're refactoring things out. Notice how in our admin we also have our REST APIs, and we're calling upon this class here. It's called IWS Events DB Admin REST. And you can see basically we're just registering using standard WordPress to register some endpoints. So if we come back in here, how did they get installed? Well, let's go back to the includes events DB here, and notice when we start to register our admin hooks, because we're calling them more admin hooks than public, we could include them anywhere else, but I think admin's a good place for them. We can see we're opening this up, we're getting the version numbers, and we're creating this little instance that when we're using the actual formal WordPress hook, we're using that little object class function method to actually then load in these functions. And as we see, they're nice custom names. If we actually go now into that file, we can see that that is where those functions are. So function add event, let's come back down, function create rest routes edit, etc. All of them are here. So obviously you can split these up into many more files, but that's basically how we're wiring things in. So with that, we now have all our admin pages, and in them we have basically the functions that we want. So for example, when we go to create event, well, how are we getting this page? If we go to events admin menu, admin here, and if we look, we can see as we scroll down, we have the event management plugin, the dashboard, the list page. Here are all the pages: edit page, delete page, create event. Here is where I'm using WordPress, using the flushing technique, the OB start, and using the global constants to actually find the partials, the actual kind of code for that page. So if you follow the script down here, this is a bit of debug here. It's basically start the OB start, get the template, flush it out. If we go into our partials, this is the one that comes by default, and it tells you that this should consist of primary of HTML, but we can create our own templates here, and this template create here is listed here. And so what it is, it's standard PHP, and I'm using this a bit like view style to, rather than refactor files all out, I'm putting the style, the HTML, and then the JavaScript all on one page. You can refactor this out, and all this is doing JavaScript and using the REST API to basically send that. And I'm not going to go into detail about the page itself, but if we come in all the REST API capacities in this video, but if we come in here, we can see we've got some basic client event handling, set up a date, this is a little bit boilerplate form for you. We can upload an image, that's wired for us. It's a little bit tricky to see that because I've got my video thing. That's it. And then if we register event, we can see we get back the JSON response from the REST API. In a later lecture, we'll look at the REST API itself, but that's how it's listed. We can see the list event page. And if we come into back down here, we can see the edit page. This is where the edit page is. Standard kind of PHP, WordPress, the form, coming down, and here is a JavaScript file. Rather than doing a server kind of submission and getting it back, I'm using kind of Ajax, and this is how it's involved here. But when you're at this stage here, once you're in this particular page, you can use your regular WordPress code routines that you have yourself. This wiring, you can see how it actually gets manifested, because when we're back in here and when we've looked in here, it's actually using the partials. So in the admin we have partials, and in public we also have partials, and that's where we can basically have our template files that we'll see the public side later. That's how all this is wired in here. So this is covered then basically. If we come back into this, we can sort of see when we sort of event management, we said event management dashboard, sampled, prepared the WordPress database. If we scroll on down, we can see that all that SQL business is being done here. Sample WordPress database, inserting, getting data in and out. These are just to show where we could put those functions. So to recap, what we've done here is we've seen that having gone into class events, how we've loaded in our hooks. So if we've got our custom hooks, we can have our own file for them. And we've seen how for our admin pages, again, it's another hook, custom hook, but we're using the admin menu, and we're using the event management menu, the function that's actually found in the boilerplate events DB admin. That's where the file lives. If we scroll back up, we can see that that's where all that is stored. We've seen that before. All the way up. So we come into here, class events IDB, event management menu, event management menu, where if we come back up, that's the function there, and that's where it's adding in all the pages. So going back, if we look at our file that we've got here, we can see that in the includes, this class events DB, that's the most important one that loads everything in. We come in here, we can see how in the plugin original file we get our global constants. Then we can see in the class-plugin name, whatever your plugin's called, that one in includes. And that's where we load dependencies, set locals, run out all our hooks, and they will be stored in, for example, when you want the admin hooks, that's the file that stores them there. Load dependencies, we can put in some actual function files here. If your public hooks, the actual functions themselves will be defined in here. Coming back down, we can sort of see, for example, here the loader, when we're queuing them, where all these files are stored and they're linked. So in the class plugin name, in the includes, that's where we define our hooks. And what we'd normally do is seeing admin and queue scripts and then the function, we have this object here that does it for us because it's an object oriented based plugin. These files are just whatever file names we want. So that's the wiring of hooks and constants, and that's how we can then, based on that, for example, when we have our admin menu, the functions there stored in that file, we can then basically create all those pages. So in a sense, we've done the sort of the back end. We've basically set up this. We've got all the different pages and seen where they've come from. And basically, if you follow through on the code, you'll see when we click on here, it goes to this page here, event management -edit -event. And you can see we have that template here, template edit event. Working through the form, the nonces, sending the form data to the REST API, and that completes it there. So that's the sort of wiring of sort of the back end in terms of where the hooks and everything goes. Obviously the detailed WordPress and the REST API is a different topic, but this is basically video series on how to actually wire everything together.